Good morning and happy Tuesday to you. We are here again with Torah and Messiah podcast number 5. I'm your host and narrator for today, Chris Wilson. Let us go ahead and get into this of chapter 2 of Principle of the Seed as we look at Hebrew thinking and Greek thinking. What an excellent topic, because this will really help to understand our mindset and our perspective on the scriptures of how we view them by the people who wrote them. And as we get on into these podcasts, we'll switch in over to a different reading called Let This Mind Be in You that will go into a greater depth of Hebrew and Greek thinking. But let's go ahead and get into this. Before drifting too far into our subject, it is imperative that we take a cursory view of the difference between Hebrew, scriptural thinking, and Greek, Western thinking. There is a very long historical background to the thought process that our culture practices and the thought process of the people recorded in the scriptures. Cultures and thought processes are steered by language. Our English language, which springs forth primarily from Greek and Latin, is very abstract in its thought process. Many of the theological terms in our English Bibles are abstract and linear terms. Abstract is a word used to describe words and concepts that have little or no discernible objects. In other words, terms that have no particular object with which to associate the word. Examples of English abstract terms are faith, believe, love, obey, glorify, and fulfill. These are the kind of words that are not wrong in of themselves, but are subjective terms, and are left up to the current cultural definitions and trends. Hebrew is a very concrete language and thought process. As we take scriptural words further back to their pictographic meanings, we bring them back to their original environment, the mountaintop. Theological terms are ultimately defined by natural, physical, and material terms. These words find their action-driven background in everyday things that the Hebrew people would have experienced. In Psalm 1, we have a great example of concrete thought maintained by the King James translators. Psalm 1, verses 1 through 3. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of the sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of Yahweh, and his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doth shall prosper. As you can see, there are multiple uses of words that come from seeds and natural phenomena to describe how a man should live and have his very being. Seeds are one of those concrete terms that Yahweh will use to describe how we are brought into the kingdom of Yahweh and who his people truly are. Our Western culture is also linear in its thinking process compared to the cyclical or agricultural Hebrew. We are trained in linear thinking, especially in religious matters. Imagine for a moment that I am your history teacher, and I am in the middle of a lecture on the Byzantine Empire and its progression into the Dark Ages. As you listen to me, you are picturing in your mind an historical timeline. I might even have one drawn on the board in front of the class. In this timeline, the future is pictured as a line extending indefinitely to the right. The past is pictured as a line extending indefinitely to the left. In the middle stands a cross dividing BC from AD. In our religious circles, written on the line to the left of the cross are words such as Old Testament, the Law, Jews, no Holy Spirit, animal sacrifices, judgment, and lots of blood. To the right of the cross is a line with words such as New Testament, grace, peace, love, church, Jesus, and the Holy Ghost. Extending from the line to the left are the different periods of time called dispensations. Beginning with creation, we have various dispensational periods and covenants slowly marching toward the cross. After the cross, we have a long dispensation of the church, with the Dark Ages placed about a third of the way along the line, extending to the right just before Calvin, Luther, and the beginning of the Reformation. History and life are a straight line marked by an ever-evolving ascent of man, society, technology, and culture. Our dominant religion takes this perception into its view of Yahweh and his plan for man. Yah's work in this world is seen as an evolutionary process. In the beginning, the people of God needed certain things and were treated and looked upon by their Creator differently than the more progressive church. The Old Testament Jews are analogous to man's great ancestors of the seas. As time marches on, our ocean ancestors dropped their gill slits and fins and took upon wings with which to fly. After bearing legs and walking upright, our Ramapithecus ancestors soon progressed to Piltdown man, then to Nebraska man, on to Cro-Magnon and the Neanderthal, dropping unneeded appendages along the way, and finally arriving at modern man. Theologically, our ancestors did the same thing. Our, quote, Old Testament ancestors bore the burden of the Sabbath and the festivals. They were subjected to primitive food laws and odd hygienic rules. Without modern technology, they were unable to shave and were forced to wear beards and could not mix their linens. Unable to fend for themselves, they were forced to live and travel together. But as they evolved, they soon cast aside primitive prohibitions and backward regulations. They shed their Sabbaths, festivals, and dietary laws. They cut bands and cords of their ancient Neanderthal fathers and took upon new celebrations, rest days, and eating habits, finally arriving at Christian man. Hebrew thinking is cyclical. Yahweh reveals his nature and will to man in the yearly cycles that he gave his people. Each generation that follows Yahweh has the same truths revealed to them through obedience to his nature and will that he has placed in the activities of their daily lives. In the very beginning, Yahweh revealed his will through the patriarchs or fathers. This is why from Adam to Moses, you read of the lives of Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Families were accountable to the patriarch. Yah's will from the beginning was passed down through his seed, which is his word. This will become abundantly clear as we go. The Sabbath, the festivals, the new moon, the harvests, etc., were all cyclical pictures in which Yahweh embedded his nature. They were yearly and weekly reminders, teaching of the nature of their Creator. He will reveal the same truths in diverse and sundry manners to each generation. His Torah, in which he has embedded his nature and will for man, is what directs and leads his people in their daily activities and behavior. If you discard that which directs and leads your life, then you end up leading the world in immorality, and you end up seeking skewed pictures of Yahweh's nature in ways that he did not ordain. Declaring from the beginning the end. There is a significant reason why our beloved nation has strayed from her religious roots and is producing her own fruit, which has led to her national behavior. The focus of this book is a fundamental principle established from the beginning, which is the seminal foundation of all of Yahweh's revelation to us. The beginning generates a simple agricultural principle that we can only see by looking outside our windows. It is a seed. Elohim begins with a little seed. Perhaps you are already familiar with this principle. Perhaps you have been told by many churchmen that if you plant a seed of $1,000 in their ministry, God will return unto you 10,000 or 100,000. Perhaps you have been taught that this is how God's seed works in your life. Of course, logically, the ministries that tell you that do not really believe in the principle themselves. For if they needed money and really believed that, they would sow $1,000 seed in your life, so they would reap $100,000. The scriptural principle of the seed, however, is an agricultural truth given to all of mankind before all of mankind existed. It is the very basis of the words of Isaiah the prophet, Yeshayah, or Isaiah chapter 46, verses 9 and 10. Quote, "Remember the former things of old, for I am Elohim, and there is none else. I am Elohim, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, My counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure." End quote. Many of us are familiar with the passage as it is read in English. This passage, among many, reveals that part of the nature of Elohim that separates him from man is that he knows the end from the beginning. But in Hebrew, verse 10 begins this way. Transliterated, it reads, Magid Mereshit Akirith, or declaring out of the beginning, the end. Read in Hebrew, this says something much more provocative. I'll read that again. Declaring out of the beginning, the end. Could it be that Yahweh means exactly what he says? Could it be that he really did mean that he has revealed or declared from the very beginning the end? Is it possible, then, that we could gain valuable insight into the days we live by understanding the beginning? And consider this: if we, the people of Yahweh of Israel, know that the end is revealed out of the beginning, then who else would you guess knows this as well as you and I? That's right, Ha-Satan, the devil, the dragon, the beast, and in general, the bad guy. In the end will be his revealing and his demise, and he too knows that this is revealed in the beginning. Now, if you were he, and armed with his information, what would you do? I think it would behoove you to keep us all away from the beginning, and this is precisely what he has done. The adversary's most successful technique for the past 2,000 years has been to convince most Christians that the beginning has been done away with, and that it is no longer relevant for New Testament believers. In the beginning are revealed the foundation and origin of all things. I would like to be so bold as to say that all scriptural theology, all of Yahweh's desire, will, nature, purpose, and even eschatology are found embedded in the first 4 chapters of Genesis. I will take it a step further. I believe that everything is found embodied in the 22 letters of Hebrew alphabet. It is the word of Yahweh which reveals that the universe and everything in it was framed by the word of Yahweh. Ephraim, chapter 11, verse 3. Or that is Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 3. Quote, "Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of Yahweh, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear." End quote. The purpose of this book is to bring to light a very simple principle, a principle that is brought forth from the beginning and can be seen operating in our everyday world. A principle that can be verified by simply looking out the window. A revelation from Yahweh, from the beginning, that is substance and evidence, and that was experienced and lived every day by the people of Yahweh, the Creator. It is imperative that we begin learning the word of Yahweh from the beginning, for eternal truth is embedded there. You will notice throughout this book that all the Hebrew words that I will use will be taken back to their etymological meanings. Etymology is a word that means the study of the roots. This word in the Greek is etymon and means true, actual, or real. It comes from a Hebrew word, as all words do, emet, which means truth. So when we trace the etymology of a word, we are studying truth. Let me illustrate why I'll be using a lot of Hebrew words. Suppose I compared Hebrew words to a river, a great river that, like many rivers, begins on a mountaintop, where the rains pour out from heaven, cascading over the rocks and through the trees, rushing toward the valleys below, beginning at a place in which the water is pure, pristine, and energized, a place where the water is healthy and full of oxygen. But as these narrow, clear streams begin to flow through the valleys and become rivers, things begin to change. Man begins to remove or diminish the life that is in it, and begins dumping in or adding to everything from animal and human waste to toxic chemicals, bodies, and car parts. When this river eventually oozes into a great lake or ocean, it has become thick, brown, and undrinkable. The river started out pure and pristine, but after time, it eventually became polluted and profaned. Throughout the centuries, words have changed just like that river. Many of us have been drinking from that river, but not from the mountaintop. My focus is to bring us back to the mountaintop, as Martin Luther King might say, and drink from words as they were revealed in the beginning. You will notice, when beginning at the beginning, that Yahweh first brings forth the heaven, the earth, the waters, vegetation, trees, fruit, grass, herbs, and seeds. The Apostle Paul told us that the natural comes first, then the spiritual. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 46. Quote, "Howbeit that was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural, and afterward that which is spiritual." The Creator's first revelation to us is found in the creation of things that you and I can look outside our window and see, touch, taste, smell, and hear. Alright, I'm going to break this one up right here into a part 1 of chapter 2, and I'll continue on into a part 2 of chapter 2 of Hebrew thinking and Greek thinking. So I'll have that one up shortly as well. You folks in the meantime have a wonderful, beautiful day. Stay tuned, and as always, Yahweh bless you. Please subscribe and share. Leave your comments below, and we'll talk to you soon.
Oh, you Israel, put your hope in Yahweh, who makes wars to cease, who tears down kings and queens. For your sake, Israel.